Dear friends, today I will take up one of the elements of Jesuit education. We have in the Jesuit education one element which is very, very significant for all of us to understand when we talk about education. That is, Jesuit education is value oriented. If you take about values out of the educational system, then there is no Jesuit education. And I think it is true to about any progressive education must contain this vital element, that is, we must educate children through values. Values are, values are caught, it is not taught. So that means our teachers, our educational agents, those who are imparting or educators, everybody must be a role model for our children. Our children must learn and cultivate the values. As they cultivate the values from the families, schools also have an added responsibility to make them value-based. And values are many, we know. Values are, different types of values are there. Personal values are there, very, very important. Social values are there. We have ethical values, we have moral values, spiritual values, physical values. We can talk about political values. Values are many. And all these values have to come into play in Jesuit education. That's why Saint Ignatius, when he thought about education and its importance, when he thought about the pedagogy of education, he brought this aspect. That's why Jesuit education always stressed on humanitarian subject, making human beings better, humane, to have a heart. And I think if over the past 500 years, Jesuit education continued with this. Today there are challenges, but in spite of the challenges, we need to focus on value-based, disciplinary-based education. And when we talk about values, there is a very famous Indian sociologist. His name is Dr. R.K. Mukherjee. He talks about values, some significant points for us. And I think St. Ignatius was also stressing the same thing in his time. 500 years ago he thought of this. And over the period of time, the Jesuits have brought out the pedagogy based on these Ignatian values, which is called Ignatian Pedagogical Paradigm. Also it is known as Integral Pedagogical Paradigm, which is called IPP. We know that the IPP stresses on the context of the person who is the learner, for example, learner's context. And based on that context, the person has some experience. We should talk about that experience. And the third point is, based on that experience, we must enable the person to reflect. And reflection must lead to action. And action must be evaluated. And this cyclical move will continue. That is called IPP, which is, I think, very significant today. And when we talk about this context-based, experience-based reflection and action, that means value-based. Now, Dr. R.K. Mukherjee says, value is the foundation. Values is the foundation for any human being. Because by their nature, that is human beings, all of us, all human relations and behavior are embedded in values. If sans values, there is no human relationship. And that is, I think it is very, very important for us to understand, especially as educators. Because Dr. R.K. Mukherjee says value is the foundation for understanding the level of motivation. What motivates me? What thrills me? What impact I have, what propels me to do a particular action. That's my values. And he also says values influences my perception, one's perception. How do you see? How do you analyze? What and how do you form your world view? It is basically coming from the values. And therefore, value helps us to understand what we are ought to do and not to do, or what ought to be or not to be. So value is very, very significant and very important. Values also contains interpretations of right or wrong, what we are expected to do, that discriminative power, that prudency, what is good and what is bad, that understanding. It is basically coming from our values, and values are already we are cultivating or getting it from our families, starting from our families. Okay, so values also influence our attitudes and our behavior. For example, what is my attitude towards the other person? For the example, for the elders, teachers, people at home, towards my parents, brothers and sisters, all my behavior depending upon. If I have respect for people, that's a value. Respecting other person is a value. If I have respect for other person, that means I am value based, and my whole attitude will be based on that. I'll give human dignity to people. In the current context, this pandemic, we have seen millions of people are suffering, and we have seen all over the world, and in India we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been deprived of everything. They are actually migrant workers, maybe homeless people, maybe poor people in the villages. Online classes, today we are talking about online classes. We see there's a huge divide. So the policy makers, if they have certain values, harmonious values, a well-being of the people are there as their value, I am sure that the policies will definitely colored by that values. And that's why certain states things are much faster moving, and for the welfare of the people simultaneously they do many things. Some other places we have seen it, there is not much care. The leaders are speaking all kinds of things which are not very conducive for the people's welfare. So therefore, our behavior, our attitude, etc., is determined by the values which we have. And that is why primarily education must give values. And values also implies that certain behaviors and outcomes are preferred over others. Certain values are better, certain values are not so good. We call about universal values, for example. Do not kill somebody. Murder is a crime universally. So that universal value must be understood. Values also allow the members of an organization or a family or a society to interact harmoniously. Harmonious existence is very, very important, because in a diverse situations like our country, multiple culture, multiple religions, everything is many variety. I think harmonious existence is a value. If we have that values, it makes it easier to reach goals and would be impossible to achieve individually. Collectively we need to do. Therefore, teamwork must be a value. Networking, collaborating with others, it must be a value if we want to be having a progressive and developed nation. There is also another important about values. Values are the guidepost of our lives. For example, my goal. What is my goal? According to my values, I move. And what motivates me is my values. It's interesting to know that individuals and organizations with preconceived notion of what ought to and what ought not to be. Of course, these notions are not value free. Everything people think is value based. But today what is happening in the education field is a lot of competition, cutthroat competition in fact. We are so much of self-centered, individualistic. We are not paying much attention to the other person. We don't care about the right of the other person. We don't give dignity to people. There is no justice. There, I think, because of some fault in the educational sector, if we create only people who are mark oriented, intellectual oriented, only this faculty only develops and this one we leave out, that means something drastically wrong with us. And that's why this disharmony is coming, this division is coming, this murdering people coming, raping people, looking down upon others. And we also have the division in the societies in the name of religion, in the caste, in the language, division in the name of language, culture, ethnicity, country. All these things are coming up in the minds of people as they grow. Why? Because the media is propagating such hatred, and we see at all levels there is valueless speaking. People are not concentrating on the rights of the other person. Laws are made in such a way. So, and there is an overall picture. If you look at, there is a domination of a certain group, certain class of people, etc. I think that is why a lot of disharmony and it's very disadvantageous things are happening. We can come together, we can work together, and we can make our world a better place to live in. And that is why Ignatius is focusing on that important aspect called values. And when we look at values, there is something about the Ignatian tradition. I just explained to you one or two points quoting from a book. So far, I spoke general things. The value-oriented education, as I said, Jesuit education is value-oriented, no doubt at all. We have to strive for values. There is no aspect of education, not even the so-called hard sciences, which is neutral. All teaching impart values. And that is why we need to concentrate on values. A value literally means something which has a price, something dear, precious or worthwhile, and therefore something that is ready to suffer or sacrifice for, which gives one a reason to live and, if need be, a reason to die. People are sacrificing their life for a cause. We have a number of intellectual, super intelligent people. We have seen economists and so on working for the people. They are sacrificing their comfort, living in the tribal areas, in the Dalit people who are living in the marginalized people's areas, etc. People are going and committing this. They can earn highly qualified people. For example, we have seen Narmada Bachao Andolan, the founder of that movement, Metha Patkar. Impressive career. She could have earned plenty of money. And we have now, there are many people who have been targeted by the business corporates and so on, because they dedicated their lives for the welfare of people, educating people, giving dignity and honor to people, and considering them as human beings. Many places. We have enough examples of such. So, based on their values they are committing. So there is a reason to die also, and a reason to live, of course. Now, 500 years ago, Saint Ignatius of Loyola identified the crust of this, that education must be value oriented. And he says there are 3 levels of values. The first one, he says, actually, where does the value start from? He says values are anchored in the head. I see why something is valuable. and I am intellectually convinced of its worth. That's the first point. So head is important. We start thinking, we have a conviction, we accept it. The pros and cons we reflect, we analyze, and we take a stand. That is intellectual level. The second level is values are also anchored in the heart. Equally, the heart also plays a big role. And the heart says, the language of the heart tells me that something is worthwhile. It will tell us. Something is worthwhile. Stand for. It is good to. Because heart has an affective experience. Sometimes what the heart knows, the head may not know. So values lead to actually heart experience, heartfelt experiences. The language of the heart tells me that something is worthwhile. I am able to perceive something as of value. I am also affected by its worthiness. And it can be of a thing, of a person, or a situation, etc., etc. So values are it's coming from the heart also. And the third aspect Ignatian will say, values also are anchored in the hand. Hand is a symbol. Values also anchored in the hand. And he says, when the mind and the heart are involved, the whole person is involved. Values lead to actual decisions and real actions, and necessarily so. So, there is head, there is heart, and there is hand. 3 H's which we talk about. And Ignatius will say, in his entire worldview, he says, each academic discipline, when honest with itself, is well aware that the values transmitted depend on assumptions about the ideal human person and the ideal human society, which are used as a straight point. It is here especially that the Jesuit mission of promotion of justice can become tangible and transparent in our educational works. I quote, for this mission must guide and inspire the lawyer and the politician, the manager and the technician, the sociologist and the artist, the scientist and the author, the philosopher and the theologian. Every walk of life has to be influenced by the values. And one's value determines his profession, his success, his contribution to the world. That is why every walk of life, these values have to be transmitted. Therefore, our Jesuit schools, our colleges, our universities, our institutions make their essential contribution to society by embodying in our educational process a rigorous, probing study of crucial human problems and concerns. It is for this reason that the Jesuit colleges and universities must strive for high academic quality. There is no compromise on competence. We are speaking of something far removed from the facile and superficial world of slogans and ideology, of purely emotional and self-centered responses, and of instant and simplistic solutions. We have learned that value must be inseparable from Jesuit education. What is happening today in educational sector is this, that more of concentration comes on the intellectual level, memory based and academic inputs. No, that is very important. As I said, there is no question of compromise on the competency of people, excellence of the people. We have the Jesuit education identified 4 C's or 4 C's. The first C is competence, conscience, compassion, and commitment. Now, competence is uncompromisable. But remember, when we have this competency with us as a primary aim of Jesuit education, we should not simply consider only the academic input and making a person an intellectual monster. We have plenty of examples. We have the person who destroyed WTC, World Trade Center, the Twin Tower, and the person who attacked the Pentagon. Very intelligent. It is not easy to enter into such a mighty power and attack them and so on. That means he was intelligent. But this intelligence was not used for the welfare and well-being of human society. That is why we say intellect alone is not enough. Intellect must be coupled with the affective experience and a concern for the people, a compassionate heart, and that heart which leads the person to be humane. Then only the society will progress, then only the country will progress. I think Jesuit education must focus on this, and all other education must focus on this, value-based education. We are not here to create only intellectual monsters, giving mark only and achieving marks and number one in the society. That is not the aim of our education. Our education is, yes, of course, he can do his best. You may not be the best in the world, but are you doing your best? That's the question we must ask always. And therefore, there should be head, heart, and hand. All the three H's must work in tandem with each other in a harmonious way to make our education more value-based, more comprehensive, and the person will become more humane. And if a person becomes more humane through the best way of education, I am sure the society and the nation will be more humane. And I think that is a need of the hour. This pandemic is teaching us that, telling us that, focusing on more on harmonious existence, coming together, helping each other, hand-holding each other, and working as one human family. That must be our values. That universal value must not be allowed to go away from us. Future generation will be indebted to us if we give proper value-based education to our children to form them better human beings. I think that is the contribution of Jesuit education giving. One of the aspects of Jesuit education, therefore, is value-based education. We continue to pledge ourselves that we will impart value-based education for our children. And I appeal all of us, all education, progressive educationists must come together and focus on this total human persons, the integrity of human person based on the human, social, moral, ethical, and physical, psychological, etc. Values. I'm sure values cannot be negated in education. Thank you very much, and God bless all of us.